Divine Doctor, Chapter 1, Advent of the Phoenix, Shun Dynasty, Tianwu, Year 21. It was a clear moonlit night, and the stars were twinkling. A sudden strike of lightning shook the area. Even the imperial palace's roofs trembled ever so slightly. Despite the thunderclap, there was not a drop of rain. Inside the palace, the supervisor of the astronomy board quickly rushed to the heavenly hall and prostrated before the Tianwu emperor. Your Majesty, there have been movements in the heavens from the northwest direction. The phoenix has arrived. The Tianwu emperor, holding his cup, trembled ever so slightly. Northwest. With his eyes half opened, he sent the advisor back. Thinking about it, Ming-er should be returning soon. Another lightning bolt struck from the clear sky towards a cave in the northwestern region of Dashun. It directly struck the corpse of a dead female and knocked it up. Amidst a pile of corpses, Feng Yu Heng struggled to raise her body to a seated position. Her consciousness is still a little shaky, but after a short period, she was fully lucid. Upon opening her eyes, she is startled by the sight of countless corpses. Well, shit! She blinked her eyes and moved a skull that was on her leg. She took in her surroundings and contemplated, did I really die or not? She clearly remembered being on a helicopter that had exploded at an altitude where survival was not possible. As a high-ranking medical officer in the military, she was able to maintain her consciousness at the moment of impact. She was certain that she had died. Without a doubt, she had died. She had died and then reincarnated. On top of the pile of dead bodies, she stood up and stretched her arms and legs. In the next moment, a stream of memories flooded her mind. Her name was Feng Yu Heng, age 12, and daughter of the first wife of the left Prime Minister Feng Jingyuan. 3 years ago, a family ancestor committed a crime and the family was exiled to a desolate land. Fearing the implications, the father quickly demoted her mother, Yao Shi, in favor of concubine Chen Shi. As if that wasn't enough, some bastard oracle came forth and said to Feng Yu Heng, this child will lead an evil life. If she is allowed to continue to reside in this manner, then there will come a day when the Feng clan may become broken and scattered. Like that, with a wave of his hand, the patriarch sent Feng Yu Heng, Yao Shi, and the just-turned 3-year-old little brother, Feng Zirui, off to a small, remote northwest mountain village. There, they would need to fend for themselves. Holy crap! She saw the entirety of the former life as though it was a movie. Feng Yu Heng had a realization. I've been transmigrated. Different era, different age, different world, different appearance. The only similarity was the name. Don't worry, she dusted her hands and soothingly said, your misery and suffering, I have understood it all. Since I am here, I will not let those that have bullied you live happily. I will properly sort out these debts with the Feng manner. Suddenly a soft sigh came through her mind. A girl's voice floated to the surface of her mind and said one phrase, thank you. Her mind shook slightly as something seemed to slowly drift away. Feng Yu Heng chuckled. It seems like the previous owner of this body was very unwilling to die. Only after hearing her promise was she willing to depart. However, for such a father to exist, to have such a family with so-called family ties, hating them was normal. She had always been one to keep her promises. Since she had taken over this body, revenge was naturally a must. Feng Yu Heng adjusted her dress made with materials of poor quality, then dusted it off. Using some bodies as steps, she climbed out the mass grave. Before even having a chance to take in her surroundings, the sound of a human voice came along. Selling that girl to the drunken flower house in the prefecture capital can bring in 50 silver. So long as we can make the sale happen. Forget marrying damn wretches. I'll have enough to marry 2 young girls. That's optimistic. You dare to marry young ones. Even if I have to go to prison with you, I'll make sure to report you to the governor. Okay, I'll stop gossiping. You damn women sure have a lot to say. Feng Yu Heng furrowed her brows. Her mother was sick, so she had gone to a nearby mountain to pick medicinal herbs. She was ambushed and knocked unconscious. Before losing consciousness, she had looked back and had seen that the man who had struck her was Wang Shujian of the Wang family, head family of Cundong village. She moved deftly towards the 8 o'clock position behind her and snuck closer to the approaching voices while hiding herself. She quickly took a look around, seeing an area densely populated by trees on a hill. She snuck behind them. Chapter 2. Devilishly Handsome Man. Now was not the time to act rashly. Feng Yu Heng had never been overconfident, especially since she had only just arrived in this world. Aside from the occasional memory stemming from the body's original owner, she knew absolutely nothing. Furthermore, she was merely 12 years old and had a pitiful appearance, skinny arms and thin legs. She was not foolish enough to want to fight tooth and nail with 2 adults. Just as she hid herself, she spotted the couple creep towards the pit full of corpses. Feng Yu Heng stared at them carefully and ascertained the opposition's identity. They were indeed Wang Shugen and his horrid wife, Xu Shi. The two looked all over the pile of corpses and realized their merchandise was missing. Xu Shi anxiously said, "This isn't right. This is definitely the place we left her body. Where is she?" Wang Shugen stomped his feet. "She can't have escaped, right?" "Impossible! That was enough medicine to keep her asleep for 2 days and 2 nights. How could she possibly wake up the same night?" Wang Shugen became exasperated. "Then you tell me, where has she gone?" Xu Shi also started getting frustrated. "What good will come out of shouting at me? After she was knocked unconscious, we both made sure to give her sleeping pills. You made sure we did, so why is the blame solely on me?" Wang Shugen was speechless and dejectedly lowered his head. Unwilling to give up, he struck a corpse. Following his lead, Xu Shi also began to get angry. Having seen more of the original owner's memories, Feng Yu Heng finally had an understanding of the situation. It seems that the couple had knocked the body's original owner out, then had fed her sleeping pills. They hid her body in the mass grave pit, then returned in the dead of night to retrieve her body. From there, they would carry her to the prefecture capital and sell her for money. With this, Feng Yu Heng had a realization and felt her face. It seems that the original owner was pretty good-looking. She reached down and picked up a handful of pebbles. The corner of her lips turned up in a small smile. With a sudden snap of the fingers, a pebble found its mark and struck Xu Shi in the back of her head. The sound of the woman's enraged voice then resounded the area. "Ah!" Following immediately, she yelled, "Who was it? Who hit me?" Wang Shugen stopped and looked back towards Xu Shi. "Where could there be people?" "There is! There was someone that just hit my head." As they were talking, another pebble flew over and struck its target between Wang Shugen's eyebrows. "Ah!" He also let out a scream, but before his scream had finished, even more pain erupted all over his body. The two people were scared witless. Their torch had fallen to the ground long ago, quickly setting fire to the pile of bodies. "Let's go!" Wang Shugen recovered his wits and pulled on a sitting Xu Shi who was paralyzed by fear. Carrying her, he climbed out of the pit. Unfortunately, as he reached the edge of the pit, his leg was struck by a jolt of pain, and he fell back down into the pit. Xu Shi's fat body was like a ball and rolled down into the pit where her clothes touched a flame and caught fire. Wang Shugen's situation was not much better. His clothes were burned to tatters. Blood covered his leg, and a chunk of skin was missing from the left side of his face. Feng Yu Heng tossed out her last pebble and dusted her hands off. She was done meddling with the two, who had finally struggled out of the pit. It was only her first day. It would be best to avoid killing people. It would be inauspicious. The two ran off far in the distance while the fire continued to burn in the pit. Feng Yu Heng turned towards the grave, put her hands together, and bowed. Dust to dust, soil to soil. Being cremated is better than being left to the elements. The sound of a soft grunt suddenly carried from nearby her. This caused Feng Yu Heng's hair to stand on end, as she had not noticed anyone else. Rather than scared, she felt wary of being the mantis that stalked a cicada, unaware of the aureole behind it. Thinking of her previous life in the 21st century, she was a master of both Western and Chinese medicine. Starting from the age of 12, she had followed her grandfather around and mixed in with those at the barracks. She joined them in special training regardless of wind or rain. She never once backed down and started showing signs of being many times more keen in detecting things than others. On top of that, she was a good martial arts foundation. She performed her first surgery at 18, and at 25, she was already a high-level medical officer in the Marine Corps. If she had not died at 28, then her achievements would have been even grander. Not wanting to think of the past, Feng Yu Heng turned around and headed in the direction of the sound. A man, rather, he was a young man at most. He appeared to be around 20 years old and was wearing a dark purple brocade robe. His hair was long and neat. His features appeared to be sculpted. His eyes shone with a cold light, and his gaze was keen like a hunting falcon. Between his eyebrows was a small, nail-sized purple lotus pattern. It gave his already handsome face a devilish charm. However, Chapter 3, Burning to Death Together. Feng Yu Heng furrowed her brows and sniffed a couple of times. The smell of blood filled the air. Realizing something was wrong, she looked down and saw that the young man was sitting on a straw mat with both legs straightened in front of him. His knee was starting to bleed profusely. "Who are you?" she cautiously probed. Based on the current situation, this man was not a danger to her. As a doctor, she could tell that those legs had suffered major injuries. There was no need for closer inspection. At present, standing up was absolutely an impossibility. Hearing the question, the young man coldly humphed and did not respond. But with that cold hump, his lips formed a slight smile that charmed her for a few moments. Feng Yu Heng suddenly shivered. His noble air and bewitching demeanor were both natural. In spite of his face being a pale white and drenched with sweat, and his legs being in a dire condition, his aura of nobility was not affected in the slightest. He appeared capable of wreaking havoc. "If you've seen enough, then go away," the man, leaning on a mountain cliff, coldly responds. He had not forgotten how love-struck this country girl appeared earlier. Feng Yu Heng was utterly irritated by people that spoke this way. For what reason should she leave when told to leave? Might as well take a few steps forward. Finding a few tufts of grass, she sat down. "Is this mountain your family's? Did they dig the roads? I refuse to leave. What can you do about it?" After speaking, she thought of something. She turned her head and looked to the side, then let out a laugh. "Huh! Currently, the one that needs to leave is not just me. You need to leave as well." She pointed towards the massive fire raging in the mass grave. "Based on how it's currently burning, this place will soon be entirely burnt." The man turned his head. The moment he saw the blaze, his face became even whiter. His brows furrowed, and that purple lotus was quickly scrunched tight. His mind was flustered. Forget it. Feng Yu Heng had absolutely no resistance towards men who grew to be like this. Before heading off, she walked over to the young man. I'll give you a hand. Can you handle walking a little? The man looked and inspected her carefully. The girl was at most in her early teens. Her body looked so thin and weak that she'd break with the slightest touch. Indeed, her earlier performance with throwing pebbles was amazing, but that relied on tricky techniques. Really relying on her to support his weight would be difficult. Well, say something. Feng Yu Heng used her hand to waft the air to his nose. The fire might not be big, but don't you feel that the smell is getting stronger? The crevices in the mountain guide the wind. The smell we're currently smelling is burnt corpse, burnt human flesh. That's enough. He couldn't bear hearing any more. The more he heard, the more nauseous he became. Try pulling on the mat. Let's see if you can pull me out. Is it that bad? Feng Yu Heng stared blankly. He wanted her, a small girl, to pull a straw mat with a grown man sitting on it. What sort of bad joke is that? Let's see. She moved forward to poke at his legs. Stop! The man proclaimed with anger as he struck out violently. With that, she was easily knocked to the ground. Feng Yu Heng's fall was excruciatingly painful. She glared at him. Are you sick? If I weren't sick, would I be sitting here? The man responded in a matter-of-fact attitude. I did not mean to push you so hard. I just used more power than intended. My good will was mistaken for ill intentions. Feng Yu Heng decided to leave him be. If you don't want to walk, then just keep sitting there enjoying the aroma of burnt flesh. This girl will not accompany you. She turned, about to depart. From behind, a defeated shout sounded out, then called out, Wait, hold on. With a great deal of effort, she was finally able to get him out of the mountain crevice. Feng Yu Heng felt dead tired. She did not think the injuries of the man's legs were so severe, as he was not able to put any weight on them. While half carrying, half dragging him along, his leg hit a rock. The man let out a muffled groan, but did not scream out in pain. Gradually, the anger in her heart started to lessen. She was reminded of a similarly iron-willed comrade from her former life. Even though half his leg had been blown off, he did not let out a peep. Go that way, the man pointed. Not far from here is a brook. The wind blows north along it, so the fire won't reach. Okay, Feng Yu Heng clenched her teeth and dug deep. The straw mat is already completely worn. Bear with it a little longer. No problem, he responded calmly, as though it weren't his problem. Feng Yu Heng felt a little irked and responded a little rashly. I want to trash you more so you won't say no problem. So young, yet so vicious. He turned his head and looked back at the fiery pit. Earlier, if you had more stones in your hand, then would those two have burnt to death? Thunk! She let go and dropped the man to the ground.